Last November, I went to visit Jackie in her studio in Peckham. You know, she oscillates between Peckham and Wales in her studios. And there were 2 looms in the Peckham studio. And after the visit, I sent this to Jackie. Pausing to cross a road in Peckham, weaving between the passing traffic flows, first from west to east, left to right, then on crossing from east to west, right to left, and in a building on the corner, beneath a lofty skylight, is a room away from noise. The artist at her loom, adjusting tensions, raising warps, passing her shuttle left to right, right to left, threading the weft, quietly. Look right, look left, look right again. Threads of spun wool, lines of colour, past the artist's watchful eye, past time and time and time again, and with passing time these yarns interweave into intricate patterns, composing chromatic variations to become textiles of unknowable complexity. As Paul Klee showed, a line may walk and also become a plane. And to weave, as universal as shaping clay, is to give form to the formless, and in the present, to pick up the thread of a line from ancient time. Attentively she weaves. These are accumulations of colours, compilations of lines in time. She weaves atmospherics. She weaves light. She weaves woven meditations of verticals, horizontals and grids. Baffling and pleasing the eye, Agnes Martin would appreciate her work. Jackie's reply to that said she thought that Agnes Martin might appreciate the method, but there would be too many colours. And and so I thought a little bit about that response. I thought I could put Annie Albers would appreciate her work, and that would have been easier. But this little quirk or kink proved to be interesting, because I then looked a little more closely at my kind of intuition about Agnes Martin and discovered that she, in her life in New Mexico, was tremendously involved with an interest in Navajo blankets, Navajo weaving. And so the correspondence continued. And this reminded Jackie that during this visit in the late 70s to the USA, Jackie didn't only visit New York, she traveled very widely. And she wrote back to say that she had remembered that in her diary that year, she had a Navajo blanket for every month of the year, and read extensively about the history of the Navajo people and their making of their blankets and the mythology of the Spider Woman, who really is an origin myth of the Navajo culture. And then this, in turn, this thread led to another association in which I asked Jackie about Lenore Tawney's work. And she wrote back to say, oh God, she loved Lenore Tawney's work and had seen a show at Alison Jake's gallery about this. And then, of course, we realized that Agnes Martin and Lenore Tawney were very close, had a very close personal relationship. Agnes Martin wrote the catalogue for Lenore Tawney's first exhibition, in fact. And so in this way, the musing on the weavings, in a sense, the most recent departure, if that's the right word, had led a little dance along these trains of thought and associations that had spread out from that point. And so I thought, well, much as I like the appearance of the weavings, appearances can be deceptive, the title of that ensemble. There is a sense, I think, for me at least, of a kind of almost kimono-like bodily torso aspect to them. And I said to Jackie, I'd really love to have something that we could unfold and look at together. And so this is a work in progress that Jackie brought to my studio when she came to visit a couple of weeks ago. And perhaps if those of you along the table could assist in unfolding this, I'll see if I can gather my thoughts. Keep going. I didn't know this table was going to be in the room, and it turns out to be perfect. This particular weaving was on its way with Jackie between, oh, I've taken my microphone, have I? No, okay. On its way from Peckham to Wales, but she left it behind for me to bring to show you today. I think what strikes me about these works is something which runs underneath the apparent presence that we have in front of us of a piece of weaving. I think that the complexities of these works is something that I hoped would become apparent. Okay, now here we are in the gallery views. Here is an exhibition that Pace Gallery put on of Agnes Martin paintings in tandem with Navajo blankets. I sent Jackie a link to this set of images, and she was talking about the quiet ones. I remember the zigzags, and if you know about Navajo blankets, you'll know that some of the most extraordinary chief blankets are known in the English language as eye dazzlers, that include these. And then I had a pretty wayward set of associations. I've been working with bell ringers for the last 5 years on a project with a composer called Orlando Goff. And I showed Jackie in the studio these diagrams. These are bell ringing notations for the complex systems involved in traditional English change ringing, or the ringing of peals. And you can see the sets of numbers if you're unfamiliar with these traditions, and the sets of different coloured lines indicate the changes of place of a particular ringer in relation to all of the other ringers, whether it's 6 bells, 8 bells, 10 bells, or 12. And although I've been working with bell ringers for several years, I still can't read these diagrams. And as soon as I showed this to Jackie, she said, oh yes, of course, I see. Number 1 goes here, and then it comes over to 3, and then back to 1, and then over to 7. And she could read it immediately. And this seemed a good enough, a substantial enough part of our conversation to introduce the notion that this interweaving, this complex interweaving of sound, in the ringing of bells finds a certain resonance or echo in the complexity of her practice of weaving. Here on the left is a little device that some novice bell ringers are shown, in which actual threads of different coloured wool are configured, as you can see, down at this board in order to explain the transitions. On the right, a couple of the splendid bell ringers from Bradford Peveril in Dorset, and here ringers in St Paul's Cathedral. If you look on the wall, just right of centre, this is one of many records of the achievement of ringing peals, the ringing of bells that can last anything up to 4 hours, in which the permutations of the bell sequences are not repeated, which I think is another very telling relationship to Jackie's extraordinary inventiveness in repeating but varying the repetition in a process as long as however many meters this is. And here we have one of the records that I wrote down from St Paul's Cathedral of the ringing of a peal in 1896. On Saturday, November the 28th, 1896, 12 members of the ancient Society of College Youths rang a peal of treble Bob Maximus containing 5,088 changes in 4 hours and 26 minutes in Kent variation. Whatever that means. And I think this piece of material in front of us, made between Jackie's hand and I, has some parallel to that kind of achievement. Now I'm going to throw the shuttle backwards in time. This is a double-page spread from a recent republication of Alison Britton's collection of essays, Seeing Things. And it reproduces a photograph that I took in 1981 for a Crafts Council exhibition called The Maker's Eye. And you will notice that in this photograph is a pot of Jackie's here. It's shallow bowl, and at the moment it's down at the end of the table. Perhaps if someone could bring it down to this end now, that would be brilliant timing. When I photographed this pot for this exhibition, I fell in love with the pot. And having known Jackie for 3 or 4 years by then and photographed some of her work for her, I took a deep breath and asked her if she would consider making a swap. And the swap that we agreed was that in return for this beautiful object, I would take as many photographs of Jackie's work for as long as it took to achieve the exchange. Yes, it's finished now. But one of the reasons I wanted to get this out of the show is because to remind us that even as close as we can get in the exhibition, the handling of these things is incredibly important to their understanding and their capacity to communicate, which includes turning things upside down. There are a lot of aspects to this pot, some of which I think connect with what Penelope was saying this morning about shape making and this particular period of symbiosis or reciprocity between Richard and Jackie's work. But also it's a very, very complicated piece of slab building. If I show you, and I'm sure that you would all be horrified at the suggestion, but I would personally be delighted that in a minute whoever would like to pick this up and handle it. I'd love it if you did that. Just think of Jackie. It'd be all right. This is a photograph of it where it usually sits on a Scottish oak table in my home, in my and Judy's home. And if you look at this, you can see something quite clearly about how it's, or something about how it's put together. These are individual shapes that appear to offer the suggestion of a kind of pattern making. But as I came to see it, there's a dimension in this work in which the suggestion of pattern making, I think, is it is a suggestion, but there's also the notion of unpatterning. Penelope mentioned earlier, touched on the unform or the formless, a dimension of sculpture making explored extensively and very, very interestingly by Rosalind Krauss and Yves Alain Bois in their publication of the same name, the unform or the formless, a kind of challenge or let's say an undoing of conventional notions of form in sculpture making. And I feel this current underneath aspects of Jackie's practice over several decades, an undoing of conventional potentials of not only shape making but also pattern making. Here's another still from the same show that we saw earlier of one of the carpet works at the New Art Centre at Broach Court in Wiltshire, and a closer view, this another very, very complex work. In the same way, I would suggest that what we were just hearing about in the language of pattern making in what we might call what might have been conventions of carpet patterning, there's a similar fragmenting of the pattern as a whole and a reconfiguring of the potential of pattern making within that language. I wrote an essay when Jackie showed a piece of work that's in the Arts Council collection called Carpet at the South Bank Centre. I wrote a quite extensive essay, and to extend your suggestion of taking your shoes off, with my feet back on the ground looking at carpet, I wonder about the invitation to step on it. It was shown actually on the floorboards. Of taking off my shoes, lying down and rolling on carpet. What would this mean in the middle of a gallery space? If carpet is a place and a site for looking, then it places and displaces us and our site continuously. In that sense, I think one of the extraordinary dynamic energies of her work is to do with permissiveness. It's Jackie giving herself permission, not looking for it, and whatever the circumstances might be that provide or provoke imperatives to change, the permission is something that I think she grants herself, but then also very directly, I think, it empowers us with a degree of permission or permissiveness in the broadest sense of the word towards her work, or the potential that it unlocks. Now, this is one of the first weavings that I saw that was also in the New Art Centre exhibition, and she had laid it out like this, almost as if discarded, but also asserting a relationship between the thing made and the horizontal surface, in this case, a broad window shelf rather than the floor. But I did think that it conveyed a certain sense of the human body in the way that it had been placed. This is one of the watercolours in the exhibition here. And although it might be suggestive of weaving, it maybe is a little more in its construction akin to knitting. And then I had to really remind myself that there are, in a sense, so few technologies involved in the production of clothing fabrics. You know, we have weaving and we have knitting and we have felting. And then what else? Crocheting. Thank you for adding to the list. And how much potential culturally, globally, historically has emerged from these basic languages of what you might construct from a thread, from a line. In pursuit of that, or rather, this took me back to bronze and hair. On the right is a photograph that I took of the sculpture in the New Arts Centre exhibition, very much as we see it downstairs here. And on the left, a photograph that either I or Edward Woodman took in 1983, 1988, that accompanied a little leaflet here for a wonderful exhibition that Jackie put on at the Riverside Studios in the late 1980s. And I think, well, I knew what I wanted to draw attention to here, and it was to do with what I describe in this little essay as you know that expression, a shock of hair? You know, they had a shock of hair. And that expression, I think, must bring with it a certain charge. It's not simply descriptive of a mass of hair, but it's the delivery of a certain emotional energy, a shock. And the train of thought there simply was that this hair, like this, these are threads, they're filaments. And I couldn't help imagining that in some sort of way, Jackie's weaving at this point in her work was a weaving together of the potential of this tress of hair. But it was only in retrospect, in the last couple of days when I was rereading this little pamphlet, that I realized how from 1988 to the present day, the sculpture has changed. And this tousle of hair in the black and white photograph from the late 1980s has, in a sense, transformed. It's lengthened, it's relaxed, and it's become a different kind of flow. But here are the very threads that terminated the weavings of the first blanket weavings that I think echo this moment of imagination that I had about the possibility of the threads of this tress of hair being woven. And I want to end with another music. Jackie's spoken to me a number of times about how she loves listening to jazz. And although we had spoken about this at some length, I sent her a message a couple of days ago to say, I can't remember who you said you really listened to. And she wrote an email back. And if I can find it, I must read you her words. She wrote, Thelonious Monk was the big influence. His ability just to keep chaos at bay, a musical tightrope walker. I can't really describe it. And Thelonious Monk made a famous quote, the piano ain't got no wrong notes. And If we can get it to work, Kate, we've got a little YouTube extract of Thelonious Monk to play us out. Before we start it, I glanced down the comments, you know, below the YouTube, and very near the top, and for very good reason, was this quote from someone describing, naming themselves as Siddy Siddy, talking about Thelonious Monk's music, if you bear Jackie's comment in mind. It's this list: almost hitting the note, playing around the expected note, implying the note through discord, creating a new version of the note with atonal harmonics, textural splashes. The melody never repeats exactly the same way. Much could be said, I think, about Jackie's work. So maybe here now we can hear Thelonious for a couple of minutes. Shall we just... So there he goes. And just to remind ourselves where these sounds are coming from through his genius, they're coming out of 88 keys, and on his concert grand, these 88 keys are playing some 230 strings. So Monk is weaving these strings in a kind of extraordinary improvisatory manner, which I think is probably defies an analysis. But I would say there's a parallel degree of improvisatory potential is unlocked through Jackie Poncelet's works, and that's why I wanted to start and end with the weaving. So thank you very much.